You don't know what's gonna happen, but it happened. All right. So, over under. Will this stream be more professional and less messy than the debate?
There isn't anything that could possibly be less messy than that debate.
Yeah.
Except for maybe an actual fight in an old folks' home. Like,
I would have rather see that. Actually, it would have been like more entertaining. I mean, this was entertaining though.
I said last night it felt like a middle schooler fighting with a grade schooler.
Yeah.
I don't know. I only watched for like 10 minutes and then I was just reading everyone's tweets. So I feel like I'm the purest of all of us.
Oh, you are. You
I didn't
say,
watch it at all.
Yeah,
Like
you didn't turn it on?
I was like, not watching this debate is self-care. Like, I care about my mental health way too much to watch this debate. There's no way.
Y'all are unsullied, man. I got in with the dirt and came out smelling like shit, bro. Trust me. It's just like one of those things that you just partake in that just makes you feel dirtier, like after So yeah, it was some fucking
trash.
Apparently, I'm a
apocalyptic
masochist
shit.
because I watched the entire thing live last night, stoned as I could possibly get.
Oh yeah.
And then this morning, I got up and watched it sober.
No.
Why?
Okay?
No.
This feels like dedication right now. Like,
Leslie, do you
I
need me to
am
call
not
somebody?
dedicated to the craft.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, I'm always
You need
here.
someone to come in and unplug
I
your
watched
TV.
it again, start to finish this morning, completely sober, drinking coffee. And I came away feeling the same way I did really high. What the hell did I just watch?
It was like really. Go ahead, Kenny.
I was gonna say if we were like a 100% professional show instead of like a 50% professional show, I would already have the clip from last night. At one point during our debate stream that we did last night, I without warning just did like put everybody's face full screen during like a really confusing, bewildering moment, and it's just all six of us just making these like brain is not connecting, train is trying to leave the station.
It's like the dial-up like modem tone.
I mean, which moment out of those 130 minutes?
I'm not even sure now,
minutes of
honestly.
insanity, whatever,
That's the
long
problem.
it
There were
dude.
so many now. I can't even remember what moment it was that provoked me to do this. I think it was when Joe Biden was for and against the Green New Deal in the same sentence.
Yeah, you DM'd me about that. I didn't see that part. I think I was like, I don't know. I was somewhere.
You know what? I never do this. Ever. But I'm going to give Biden a pass on that one thing. Because in that moment, Trump was so fired up and had said so many crazy things that he even confused Chris Wallace. So in that response, Biden was trying to get out his deal, but Trump kept pushing the words Green New Deal so much that when he responded as if he was for the Green New Deal. That wasn't on him. That was just so much being shoved at him at once that it just broke his brain for a second.
Well, I think his donors' money cut through the noise, and he was like, "No, I don't support it. I don't support it."
Well, like the thing, man, that Trump is effective at, and the right is effective at, is that they force Democrats, liberals to accept their framing. So, like when he kept trying to get Biden to say law and order, like, do you support the police? And it's just like you see this in Biden's campaigning, like what happened like the day after people were rioting, where the city of fucking Louisville actually preemptively set up like barracks and shut the city down, the state down and shit. And your next tweet the next morning is like, our thoughts and prayers are with the officers that were like it's just like, dude, like you guys fucking suck and you'll always lose, man. It's just I could fucking go on about it, but it was insane last night, dude. It was so insane.
Since we have Merrick here in Louisville was mentioned,
nice segue.
Gotcha. Do you wanna first of all, you could quickly say hi and introduce yourself to our audience for the first time, but also do you want to maybe quickly talk about who do you feel like was being the most irresponsible in Louisville? Was it racial justice protesters or was it cops? I would like to know your opinion.
So hi, my name's Merrick DeVille. And yeah, I was in Louisville for about 8 days, I think. I just got home a couple of days ago. I was working as a medic, so I was at all of the marches. I was on the ground with everything happening, and I think the fact that both Kamala and Joe tweeted "Our thoughts are with the police." I understand that they're going to do that for appearances. I get that, but I was there in the square whenever the what is it called? The announcement was read about whether they were going to charge Breonna's killers. And when it came out that they were only going to charge, I think Brett Hankison is the individual's name, that they were only going to charge him with 3 counts of endangerment and set his bail at $15,000. I watched an entire community, like multiple people have panic attacks at once. I watched a bunch of like girls cry. I watched a bunch of kids cry. I watched a bunch of teenagers cry. This was a community that was absolutely broken, absolutely shattered by this, and really, really upset. And I watched all of these people at once absorb this message that to them, the state doesn't matter, right? Because it's not just about Breonna Taylor. It's obviously about a lot more than that. It's obviously about the treatment of Black people in this country, and the reigning of white supremacy, and how white supremacy is inextricably tied into our police force and into our law enforcement, and in the government at all levels. And I think a lot of that was because the AG in Kentucky is a Black Republican who was on the short list for Trump's Supreme Court picks. So I think that it was easier for him to send the entire LMPD and get backup from National Guard to go to war with Louisville than it was to charge Breonna Taylor's killers. So for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to talk out one side of their mouths about how they want justice for Breonna and how they believe in justice and change in this country, and then at the next moment tweet, "Oh, we're so sorry about these police officers that got shot that survived." I think it's one of the most disrespectful, disingenuous things that could have happened. I understand, of course, they're going to for appearances, but I thought it was fucking disgusting. So that was I'm at a 9 out of 10 already. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think we're all feeling that way, especially, this, to tie it back to the debate last night, here, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will use activism as a useful prop anytime they feel like it, but you put Joe Biden on the spot and ask him to support BLM, he won't do it.
Well, and they weren't on the ground. They didn't see the shit that we saw. When I got there was 1,300 National Guard. The square, everywhere around the square, they had these really high chain link fences. There were cops, LMPD, along all of the rooftops surrounding. They had cameras, they had guns, they were, watching us. We had Tiger Swan was supposedly there, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tiger Swan, but that's a contracting company. The contracting company that Blackwater grew into was supposedly there. I think the Kentucky State Troopers were there. It was a war zone that we stepped into. The streets were, everything was boarded up. The streets were blocked off. There were concrete barricades that they dropped. Anyone driving into downtown got stopped by the police. And the police, they had to roll down your window. You had to get interviewed. They had to decide whether you could come in or out. I mean, there were cops everywhere. There was police force everywhere. They preemptively declared a state of emergency before they read the announcement. So to say that BLM are the agitators in this situation is I think it's completely ridiculous and tone deaf. And when you're saying hey, who made you feel unsafe? Was it protesters or was it cops? It was definitely cops. We were waiting to get our asses beat. I mean, there was a point where, I don't know if any of you guys saw this on Twitter, but there was a point where they had us kettled into a church, and the FBI and the LMPD were outside of the church because some pieces of plywood maybe got set on fire, a couple of in the middle of the street, a couple of blocks down from the church, and then immediately put out. Now, I don't know anything about that, but that's what happened, right? So then a bunch of us got literally trapped in a church till 3 a.m, where we were waiting to see if the FBI and if LMPD were going to come in and arrest all of us on rioting and arson charges. Never at any point did any protester make me feel unsafe. There were gang members there. There were, just straight up. And you know what? They treated me with respect and they made me feel safe. So to answer your question, yeah, definitely the police made me feel much more unsafe.
Yeah. And
We got
something,
catcalled. We got catcalled by police, actually.
Well, and what really kills me too is about the
Disgusting.
framing that Trump gave last night, and then to wake up this morning and 6 Proud Boys were arrested on federal charges. So, but it's all Antifa.
Oh, speaking of right-wing groups and the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers showed up to Louisville while we were there. I actually got into a physical confrontation with an Oath Keeper while we were there. So all he's doing is like emboldening these people, you know, saying,
Right.
does it stand down and stand by? I mean, these people were armed to the teeth, and one of them pushed me and tried to block me in and wouldn't let me go in between him and a car. And a kid came up behind and like jumped on the hood of a truck that was behind us and was like, hey, like you need to let her go. And the guy next to him pulled his baton out and hit that kid in the shins. And he's lucky that it wasn't a metal baton, that he didn't break that kid's shins. Like, these people don't need to be more emboldened than they already are. And Trump has just completely opened the floodgates for chaos.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then like, and my real like anger, because it's like at this point, it's like every time Trump speaks or is even challenged about white supremacy, what ends up happening is he just reinforces his support of them in some like, and makes it worse. And it's like, it's really pissing me off because nobody called him out on the stand back and stand by comment. Nobody said like, wait a second, what did you mean by that? Like the moderator didn't say anything. And it's like, you guys are just letting him like uninterrupted call for more violence or like, you know, like agitate these people more without saying anything. And like liberal pundits will say fucking nothing. Liberal politicians will say nothing. And it's like, and then they'll just like go around and condemn Antifa and condemn like protesters and call us all rioters and shit. And it's like, you know, what do you do when the people that you elected, because it's like, let's be real, like there's still a lot of leftists that vote. I vote in every election. And it's like, you know what pisses me off is seeing people I vote for condemn me. Like, condemn me as a person. You don't see the Republicans doing that shit, but the Democrats love to do that shit. They love to just fucking trample all over us and then turn around to be like, vote for us, give us your money, donate to our campaigns. And it's like, the fact that liberals don't fucking see the hypocrisy and see how much regular people are shit on in every election cycle is just reinforcing the anger when we are out in the streets. Because it's like, I don't condemn people that riot. I don't condemn people that break shit. I don't do that shit. You know why? Because if I was braver, I'd be doing that shit too. If I was like, if I had less control, if I had less to lose, I would be doing the same shit too. And like, I just feel for everybody in this moment. And thank you for being there, by the way. It's really awesome that we have people like you that can like give us eyewitness accounts for stuff.
Thank you.
The problem with last night's debate too is that Trump was really good at pulling out the hypocrisy of Biden. I mean, he called him out on saying, "Are you for the Green New Deal?" And he made Biden actually say no. And the problem is we're not as good on the left at calling Republicans out on what they're actually doing. Because when we do try to do it, okay, so as being pointed out, that nobody called him out on what he said about Proud Boys until today. And now when we're calling him out on it, he's able to backpedal and say, oh, well, you know, I don't even know who the Proud Boys really are. What? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like the thing is that even Chris Wallace last night said that he wasn't going to do any fact checking, right? So even that alone, to me, indicated that there's not going to be any real pushback to anything that Trump says in real time, at least. And like, furthermore, with the Democratic Party, it's just like they constantly have this imaginary like conservative in their head that they're scared to offend, right? Like they cut themselves off at the knees before they've even done anything because they're like perpetually paralyzed, right, from any sort of like political action because, well, the Republicans are going to say this. They're going to call us socialists. They already call you socialists. There are actual socialists, anarchists and communists, anti-fascists who are in the streets, right, actually like fighting for and defending the so-called like values, the liberal values that you believe in. So like at the end of the day, like, you know, Rara, you were saying it's not that they don't even see these people like, you know, the working class or like people of color. Like they do, they just don't give a shit. They're making like a conscious decision to abdicate any responsibility, like to not even serve the left, man. Like I'm not even asking, like, I mean, the things that I want, I realize are like way with like beyond the Democratic Party's scope of like imagination, right?
Y'all think
like,
healthcare is our big ass?
Right, like that. But even just like dead ass, like condemning, like even like actually pointing a finger at these right wing militia groups and at the police to allow them to do this shit, like they can't even do it, right? They can't even fucking do it.
Mhm.
It's just so infuriating.
I mean, like, look what happened. Was it with Cuomo in New York when his daughter got arrested? He turned around
De
the next day and was
Blasio.
like, "Thank you, De Blasio." Yeah, he was like, "Thank you, NYPD." And it's like, you're so cucked. You're so cucked for the police.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, they
it's
literally
disgusting. It's so embarrassing.
they made rape jokes about his daughter. They made jokes about rape. Not that I'm not even sure they were jokes, threatened. You know what I'm saying? And like this guy, yeah, De Blasio's kid, yo, because she was a part of the protest.
Yeah.
And you go around and go back around and say that, like, you know, the honorous men and women of, you know, the NYPD and shit like that. Like, it's just like, yo, I just don't, I really don't understand like how anyone thinks that by even just voting for Biden that you're gonna stem this tide of like creeping fasc, yo. Like it's not gonna happen.
I gotta say the NYPD thing too. That's like some Game of Thrones shit, you guys. Like y'all gotta really look at this and see if how fucking crazy that is. They literally held De Blasio's daughter captive and made demands. Like, do y'all understand that's what the NYPD did? That y'all are watching. This is literally what they did.
Biggest fucking gang in America, man.
Like,
and their unions have too much fucking power. That's why they're allowed to be fucking gangs. Like all this shit coming, like talking about like what's happening in LA, like the executioners. Are you fucking kidding me? Do you know what the initiation is for the executioners?
They have to kill someone, don't
They
they?
have to kill an unarmed person. Yeah, police are fucking criminal.
That's just so insane, dude. And it's like even like with the Breonna Taylor ruling, like, you know, everybody knew every time this happens, like these no indictments, right? Or no charges. It's just like we all know it's gonna happen. And the fact that like we live in this supposed democracy where like, you know, like a jury of your peers and all that shit, but we all know what's going to happen and the state knows what's gonna happen, yet we're expected to vote. You know what I mean? Then they tell you to vote. So what am I voting for? If in a case like that where you fire blindly 10 times, over 10 times, like you hit an apartment next door that had a pregnant woman and an elderly man, and you get wanton endangerment, what, like, why would anyone believe that electoralism was the solution to these problems? Like that's like it's like what the Trillbillies talk about with the E crisis, epistemological crisis, right? It's just like literally like what the fuck is reality right now? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
Well, and that post-truth shit, that's what Trump is riding on with all this shit, with like calling the Proud Boys to action, right? Like, because we've reached this point where like, unless you just come out and you say, hi, I'm a criminal and this is the crime that I've done, then like you can't be accused of anything anymore. Like no one's allowed to infer things from your behaviors or actions. In like our modern post-truth era, no one's allowed to like look at patterns or like compare things to your past behavior. Instead, like we're supposed to just look at whatever you say and take it at face value. And Trump just takes advantage of this, and the liberals just let him get away with it. So
well,
Trump
the liberals do it because they can't get away with people examining their record either.
Correct.
So it's like they can't. I mean, if you take Joe Biden's career cumulatively, he is just as bad as Trump, if not worse, because he's had more time to do more damage. And like, so it's like, it's really hard for me to wrap my mind around someone that thinks it's going to get better under Biden, because under his record indicates that he's going to move further right when he gets elected. Like that would be the first thing that in my mind, that's the first thing his administration does is he gets elected and he proves he's trying to prove to the conservatives, I'm tough on crime. So I'm going to get tough on protesters. Like I guarantee it. And it's like, I almost want him to win so that I can be like, I'm right. But I like at the same time, I'm like, he has no chance of winning. I just think we
Yeah.
should prepare for
I,
another.
I
4
wanted
years.
to ask a specific question about something Biden said last night, and then I thought about it, and I know I'm going to get eviscerated if I ask this question in any of the Democratic groups that I'm in online, because we're not allowed to question Biden. We're supposed to be questioning both sides right now. I mean, yes, Trump is a dumpster fire. We all know that. And I've been yelled at for not pointing that out. I don't feel like I should have to point that out. We all have eyes. We all have ears. We all know that Trump is a dumpster fire. So if you're pushing at me that I need to vote for Biden, then I should be able to ask Biden questions or ask questions of Biden's policies without being screamed at that I'm pushing for Trump. That's not what it is. Last night, when Biden was talking about creating jobs and creating jobs in green industries, my question in my mind was twofold. A, how is someone like me? I'm 53. I'm currently unemployed. I don't have a college degree, but I do have some college. How is someone like me going to get one of those jobs? How are those jobs going to come to me? And the second part of that question was someone like one of my children who are 27 and 22. One's in college. One had to stop college because of COVID. How are either one of those two going to get to those new jobs? How are they going to be made available? But I can't ask that question because if I do, then I'm pushing for Trump. What the hell is that? What have we become?
Yeah, like I find that interesting, man. When found it funny when Biden, people were coming up to him during the primary and asking him questions, and he would constantly say like, "Oh, why don't you just vote for the other guy then?" And it was just like, dude, like, yo, the reason why we on the left criticize like Democrats and liberals and not Republicans is because I expect a white identity party to be nothing but a fascistic death cult. Like, I'm not asking them for anything because they're fascists, right? They're proto-fascists. I mean, they're fascists like right now, dead ass, full blown. But like the Democrats who are supposedly supposed to be on our side, right? Who are supposedly like our allies. It's like, dude, I can't even criticize like Biden without being told that I'm like a Russian bot online. Well, you want Trump to win? Like, actually, like you were saying, Rara, like I'm obviously do not want this guy to win, right? Like, I think that everybody on the left, like whether you believe yourself as a revolutionary or incrementalist or whatever, like just straight up, and I'm not telling anybody how to vote, right? I know what I'm gonna do, right? But yo, I don't want this motherfucker to have another 8 years, but at the same time, it's like another 4 years. It's like, yo, they deserve to lose, but nobody deserves the fallout from their fucking dumpster fire. You know what I'm saying? Like, they really do deserve to be like humiliated and crushed and berated. And even if they lose, that's not going to happen. They're just going to like rebrand as they always do because
But they're also just going to blame us. Like,
yeah, they're going to blame us, right? And like the Democratic Party is not a party. It's like a fucking exclusive club of fail sons and fail daughters. It's like an LLC. It's like a rebranding thing, yo. Like, my fucking God, dude. Like that debate last night was just terrifying, man.
Yeah, and like it just like when you think about like, okay, they could have rallied around anyone. There were like so many freaking candidates in the primaries. If they really wanted to oust Bernie, they could have rallied around like somebody else. Like probably their best bet would have been Warren. Like, but I don't know.
I don't think she could have handled the debate though. Like we were talking about this last night.
So,
yeah, I don't know. Maybe like I don't know who would have been better, but like I know that Joe Biden was already really low on my list as people that would be like a better matchup basically in the polls. But it's like the fact that this is the best the DNC could do because they just didn't want to give us Bernie. Like they were just like, fuck Bernie, fuck all of you that want him. We're gonna do us and just tank the whole country with them. Like it makes me so mad.
I'm a Bernie fan. I was a Bernie fan first, last, third, whatever. But I honestly think the two people, if they were going to push Bernie out, which I knew they were going to do, so if we were at that point where, okay, they were not going to give us Bernie, who could they have given us that would have eviscerated Trump on that stage last night? And I think there were two options, Yang and Harris.
Maybe Harris, maybe, yeah.
I think Yang could have been on the business portion of it.
I want us to go. I want to hear everybody. You can't pick Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
Pick another candidate who ran to do the debate last
night.
Mike
Gravel. Gravel, yeah. Shout out to the Gravel Institute. I'm supposed to be talking to them soon, man. Hopefully.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's see it.
Yeah.
Merrick, who would you pick too?
I hate those.
I know it's terrible. It's a horrible question.
Probably Yang. And Yang is like this big, huge Uber capitalist, which is, not exactly my cup of tea. But I think he would have absolutely mopped the floor with Trump, and I think he would have made him look like a fucking blithering idiot.
Gang, shout out.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Yang's policies that much, but I'll agree as a debate point. Like, I don't think he doesn't have the same reticence to like actually say something that a lot of the libs like. Joe Biden was literally being attacked about Russian money and couldn't come up with a response last night. Like, that was one of the most baffling moments for sure. Trump standing there going, what about that Russian money from that mayor of Moscow, Joe? What about that money? You got to Russia. And Joe Biden is standing there looking like he has no response. I thought Russiagate was all that the libs had. I thought you at least had that.
Nah, you know which part was great though? One of the greatest parts, like when Trump, like, because there are times when Trump is like right, like when he like says things that, and even if he's saying something cynically, like it's true. And when he was like, well, Joe, you and Obama, you guys wrote the tax code. You wrote the tax code that made me not pay any taxes. It's like, yo, you're right, dude. Like he's not lying. Like and Biden, like he was known as the senator from MBNA. What is it? You know what I mean? With Delaware being a haven for credit card companies.
Yeah.
Like, dude, like everything that like Trump was able to do. Like it's like when he went in 2016, he was on the debate stage. He was like, oh yeah, I just give them money. I donate to their campaigns and they do what they do what I want. Like, this is why they'll always fucking lose, bro. Is because they're not willing to call out some of his lies as lies because that would implicate themselves in like political malpractice. So you're caught in this like, it's like you're just in constant like stasis, like floating, where you like can't move in any direction because they've already boxed you in without even touching you. And it's like genius to see him like Trump just be like, boom, boom, boom. And Biden's like, yo,
like, Aaron, that's why I think Yang or Harris could have beat him, because Trump prides himself on being a showman, and he's putting on a performance. And I think both Harris and Yang understand that. And Yang was good, and so was Harris with zingers. They were, I don't agree with either one of them policy-wise, but they were good with coming up with things that stuck. They may not have stuck for good, but they landed when they wanted them to. And I think that's what we needed last night, because nothing Biden said landed.
Well,
nothing.
Somebody's post, I'm looking at the comments. Somebody has like the orb. So like Marianne Williamson and her just like purely good energy up there with this chaotic evil motherfucker might have just been like, you know what I mean? Like Voldemort and Harry Potter and fucking, like some shit like that. Yeah, I mean, like, dude, I think anybody that was just like, I don't know, not Biden, maybe would have done a little bit better. That wasn't like Harris. I agree with you, Leslie. I think Harris, like, as a prosecutor, like. And I go back and forth on this because sometimes I think like she would fall apart, but I think with Trump,
if she's
like
drunk,
a lot of things would just land. I don't know, man. Like this is the reality we have, though, right? Two dying old men shouting incoherently past each other. Let's go, son.
Kennedy, who do you think would have been better? You can't pick Bernie. Who do you think?
I'm going with Marianne.
Hey, Orb Gang. What do we do? Orb Gang.
Y'all didn't believe in the dark psychic forces, and look where we are now.
So much fun of Marianne. Like, everyone would just be laughing at her. Like, she's so sweet and nice, but Trump would just absolutely mock her into oblivion.
No.
I think she has the bearing to like take it with grace, which I think actually fucks up Trump a lot. Like,
if anyone doesn't believe that she would have dunked, you got to go watch Marianne on Dave Rubin from way back.
Oh yeah,
she was running. It's the most incredible. She went on the Dave Rubin show. She obviously didn't know that much about him going in, you know? And so he starts like trying to be like, oh, I'm a classical liberal and all that stuff. And she's like, Dave, what are you talking about? And just like makes him look so stupid. It's fucking like, I feel like if she had brought that energy to Trump, it would have just been incredible. Because that's what I feel like we needed, was someone to just turn to Trump when he's saying this stuff. Just say,
What are you doing?
What are you talking about?
That's so much more demeaning than someone being like, how dare you? If you're just like, what's wrong, babe? Are you okay? Like,
So unbothered.
You kill him with kindness, yo. Then they got to be like, hold up, what is wrong? They should have exorcised the demon from his soul, yo. Like dead ass, bro. Like,
all right, I'm gonna say dark horse, and this might be an unpopular one, but I think someone that could have handled him in the debates would be Tulsi, because she's kind of tough. Like, I think that she has like enough zingers, but she didn't really get a ton of like media. But she's got some humor. Like, she's really tough. And Republicans, like conservatives, respect hotness, and she's hot and she's strong. And like, I think like that combo of like personality and like intellect and just like force of character, like force of like personality would have like overridden Trump in a lot of ways.
I think, Raura, you're right that she could have at least held on to the comment, or held Trump's feet to the fire about his comments about the military a lot better than Biden did.
You know, I will say that conservatives either respect hotness or it makes them lose their fucking minds and rage. Like, I'm sorry, I keep having to watch my mouth. I'm sorry. It either makes them rage like crazy at you, or it makes them respect you and like simp for you in your DMs. But I would say that there's a ton of just like pent up sexual frustration that I feel like would be used against her to undermine her and demean her because she is more conventionally attractive.
Yeah, that's true.
Changing lanes slightly, but don't leftists have the same problem?
America and I have never experienced that.
America, you especially would know. Right? Oh, dude, that. I mean, like, I'm not gonna say anything about Tulsi because I got in trouble yesterday for that. People were mad at me because I was shitting on her because she's a Hindu nationalist, but it's like whatever.
She's got a lot of problems. Like, she's not a great person.
She's not.
Yeah, but we're not.
She's not a good
talking about that. We're talking about okay.
Yeah,
we're talking about ability to debate.
Bernie, who would have won in that debate?
Maybe.
Wait. I actually.
Gravel, Harris, Yang, Tulsi.
Williamson.
And like the Orb Queen would have like that ass. She would have demolished his ass. So I would have loved to see that shit.
Okay, I want to change subjects a little bit. I want to ask y'all how you felt about like I want to get into like a few other weird moments of debate and just like get everyone's opinions. And one in particular was Joe Biden saying "Inshallah" correctly. Even
wait, what? He said "Inshallah"?
Yes.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'll just, since Aaron, you haven't seen this yet, for anybody who's watching who hasn't seen this. So
oh god,
this was about Trump's taxes. Trump said something about us getting to see all the taxes in time when they're ready or something like that. And Joe Biden just kind of mumbles "Inshallah" into the microphone, which is, first of all,
really,
bizarre.
Like, offhandedly.
Second of all, very offhand, very natural. Like, he sounded. I'll tell you this: Joe Biden. The right sometimes calls Joe Biden like a leftist. I've never bought it in any moment except for this. Saying "Inshallah" that offhandedly, that was very leftist. That was.
He sounded like a shit poster. He sounded like me.
He sounded like a Chapo guy was standing there for 1 second. You know, like. And the crazy part is he used it very appropriately too. Like, he clearly understands the phrase.
Someone was saying, like, why did Joe Biden say "Inshallah" like on God? Which is so true.
Oh God, bro.
Oh my God.
Bro, we need to make that a gif, bro. Let me see that video, please. I need to make that a sound clip. Wake up that shit every morning, bro.
What? So what do y'all think? Is it woke? Is it?
I mean, like, he came out playing Despacito. You know, he's about to like come out playing Migos next, dude. Like, why the fuck not, bro? Like, you about to lose. we're about to lose. So like, why not just bring out all the stops then?
Yeah, just like bring out all the memes and stuff. Like, but it was just like such a weird thing because it's like, did he have like one thing like written on his hand and it was like inshallah, and he's like, oh, gotta slip that in.
Got him.
Like, can't have my earpiece, so I gotta like write it down on my palm.
I'm reaching out to the Biden campaign. Let me post for you, bro, and like you will win, son. You will win. Let us.
You will.
This is a posters war after all.
Exactly. It is a
It's a
posters war.
meme war. You know that he went home and he was like, "Yeah, I did something. Yeah, I said inshallah."
Yeah, it's like inshallah. Looking at it written on his head, pronounced it right there. Nah, but like I know that Chris Wallace. Speaking of going home, I know Chris Wallace went home and just had to just take one to the head or just like smoke a blunt, man. Because that man was getting just like it was infuriating. I felt bad. I felt bad for him. Fuck, feeling bad for Biden. I felt bad for Chris Wallace that time, man. That whole night.
Man, you know what? I don't understand why they don't fucking do this. Like, excuse me, I can't stop with cursing. You know what? Like, I wonder why they don't ever just cut their mics off. Like, why? Like, after all these debates, like after knowing Trump for how long and knowing he's just going to talk over everybody, like, why not just cut his mic? Like, ratings.
I actually have a friend who used to be a segment producer at ABC News, and I asked her that this morning. And her response was, that is undemocratic. That's not what we do in debates. That's not how we handle debates. Now, there's no like rule, but this is their mindset that we should allow each person to do as they want to do so that the American public can see them as they are. I agree with that a little bit, but I kept arguing the point I understand her point, and my only thing was, okay, but after each 2 minutes, they have a moment where they can free for all. And so if they turn both of their mics on, then okay. But I honestly think that when the person who's asked the question, once they're asked the question, the other person's mic should be off. But her stance is that that's not the way network news views it. So that's never going to happen. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Trump has like surpassed everyone's idea of what news is. Like, if we're in a post-truth world, like this whole like democratic debate process doesn't make any sense anymore. That model doesn't make any sense anymore because we've had 4 years of knowing what Trump is. Like, nobody's going to go up there and be like, I bet these guys will have measured responses to things. Like, nobody is like thinking that anymore. So it's really just like psychic assault whenever you have to hear like cross chatter from these two assholes.
Robert, I agree, but I disagree. Logically, we've all seen what Trump is and what Trump's going to do. But in the recesses of our minds, many of us are still trying to hold on to the norms. It's like dealing with somebody with dementia who's older than you. Like, you're trying to be reasonable with somebody who is not reasonable. Your brain is going, okay, this is the way that it should be. But you can't handle it that way because you're not dealing with the reasonable. And that's a hard habit to break.
Yeah, I can see them wanting to hold on to a sense of normality like that. I mean, you should have standards in media, like for sure. I just think it's like, I feel like the whole rule book has just been thrown out the window the past 4 years. And it's like, maybe it's time to start looking at newer models like that are a little bit more, I guess just a little bit less like psychically wounding every time you turn on the television, like it can't be good for people's brains.
Well, who are these debates even for, right? Like, I'm reminded of this essay, I think, written by Sartre, The Anti-Semite and the Jew, where like he argues that like anti-Semites, like they know that their claims are completely ridiculous and untrue, but the point isn't to win some sort of like rhetorical like debate, right? It's not to like provide like logical points of view that come to some coherent like viewpoint. It's like it's just purely to incite. So like somebody like Trump, how do you really debate him? How do you like, I hear that the debate commission or whatever, they're thinking of like implementing new rules before the next debate, but it's like, how do you do that with somebody who has no shame, who just like lies like so quickly that it would take like a supercomputer, you know what I mean? Like quantum computing to like track all of his lies as he speaks. Like how do you do that? Like, I mean,
because it's easier to track his truths. Last night, in everything that he said 3 things that were true. 3. Everything else was complete and utter either nonsense or bullshit. So track his truths.
But his truths undermine the Democratic Party, right? Like, again, like I said, like if you want to point to nepotism and point to his family, you can do the same thing to Joe Biden, dude. Like 1 for 1, right? Like, and that's the problem with the Democratic Party is like the contradictions within that party are at such like tension and pulling apart, like the center cannot hold that. Like, I don't even understand how they juggle this shit, right? Like Joe Biden, there was nothing really Joe Biden could have went up there and done last night except talk about what he was actually going to do for the American people, which is exactly what Bernie Sanders would have done, while also like beating the shit out of him with a sock full of pennies. You know what I'm saying? But like, you didn't get that from Joe Biden. You're not going to get that from Democrats, right? These so-called logical debaters who rely on reason. Like, get the fuck out of here, dude. We're the dirtbag left, man. There's no reason left. There's no civility left, man. What are you talking about?
So, Aaron, in other words,
Post-reason.
Yeah.
But my point is, okay, so people wanted fact checking. Okay, they wanted the moderators to do the fact checking, and it's impossible to fact check Trump real time. So my suggestion is, instead of fact checking his lies, fact check things that you knew when you heard something that was basically true, and they could have fact checked those things. The other things that he was just ranting about that made absolutely no sense, just blow that shit off.
Yeah, there's nothing you could do. Like, yeah, exactly. Which is why, like, Chris Wallace, I could understand the impetus behind not wanting to fact check him, right? And I get that, because what is like the point, right? Like, literally, what is the point of trying to fact check him? It's like trying to make him feel shame, right? It's trying to pin him in a corner, and it's not gonna work, yo. He's a sociopath.
You have to appeal to people's emotion, and like that's something that like the Democratic Party like appeals to people's emotion, but it appeals to people's like negative view of like non-voters and like poor people and stuff. It never appeals to like people's like, hey, like what is happening is wrong. Like what is happening, like if it makes you feel bad, it's because you know deep down in your heart that this is not how human beings should treat each other. But again, like if you point stuff like that out and appeal based on emotion, all of these liberal politicians are so fucking corrupt and so flawed and heartless themselves that you could pick apart that rationale easily too. So it's like it's hard because it's like, you know, in like Trump appeals to people's emotions. Like he doesn't appeal to intellect. He appeals to like that sense of like wanting to push people around and fight back against the people that supposedly oppress you. And the Democrats never like really tap into that with their base. They just kind of tap into the vote shamey, like shitty, like this is all your fault. Do something about it.
Can I say something? I think what's happening is that you've got a lot of classism going on with the Democrats. And you're right. Like a lot of what they appeal to is because they're not actually a platform of human value. Like they don't actually have a platform of like values that center around human rights, because if they did, they wouldn't be these like greedy, corrupt capitalists. Right. So they don't really have like the kind of scapegoats that the Republican Party does. So I think that's why it's a lot harder. I think that's why it's a lot harder for them to kind of like rebut a lot of these things that get thrown their way. Because if you throw things at the Republicans and you're like, hey, you do this, hey, you do that, hey, you do this, they go, oh, brown people, oh, immigrants, oh, crime. And they have all these scapegoats they can point to. But the Democratic Party wants this facade of caring about human rights, so they can't overtly do that. So I think that's where a lot of this problem is. And you're like, oh, well, why aren't they doing this? You know, why are they running this candidate? Why are they, you know, saying this, that, or the other? And it's because they're basically the same as the Republicans. They just have like a different set of aesthetics that they appeal to. So they can't really do that. And another thing I wanted to say with you guys talking about like, why don't they mute people's mics? I think this is maybe a little bit cynical, But and you know, I'm not trying to say that your friend was lying to you about like, oh, we have a set of standards. I'm sure there are people within these networks, individuals within these networks that have a set of standards, but I would imagine it's actually probably much better for ratings and money, which at the end of the day is the only thing they care about, to just let these people just completely go unhinged and say whatever they want and talk over each other and cause chaos. Because if you have chaos with you and the moderator, that's way better television than everyone politely using their 2 minutes.
No, I totally agree that's a component of the issue that's going on. But the other thing too that I couldn't figure out why Chris Wallace didn't do a better job of is that Trump the entire night acted as if Joe Biden was the incumbent and he was some savior that's coming in to fix all the problem if you only elect him. Dude, you are currently the president. What are you talking about?
I mean, that's out of the fascist playbook, though. That makes complete and total sense, right? If you look at this in terms of like something that he's doing strategically, like it doesn't have to make sense because it's effective.
Right, but my point is why Chris Wallace didn't push back on that more.
Because he's also a fascist, is the thing. Like the idea that Chris Wallace and Trump are even like on opposite sides is a complete joke. Like they literally are on the same side completely, 100%. And the only reason that they were fighting last night is because Chris Wallace gives the slightest shit about civility, and Trump does not. And also Trump, it wouldn't matter. You could put like Ann Coulter, Kellyanne Conway, make anyone the debate moderator, and Trump would fight them simply because of what you're talking about. That this is the fascist playbook. Trump was quick to say, "Oh, look, I'm debating the moderator. I should have known." Make it seem like, you know, everything's rigged against me, the president of the United States.
Yeah.
And
everyone's
I mean,
just trying to stop me from being great.
And I mean, it's interesting what you said, Kennedy, and this is why, like, I was arguing with my brother-in-law about why the Democrats are probably going to fucking lose. And it's because, like, Chris Wallace, I mean, he's also like a TV journalist or whatever, so he has this air of decorum. Like, he's supposedly one of the good ones from Fox News, right? Or was, I think, because he had left. I don't know. No, he's still on Fox, I think. But anyway, it's like appealing to the so-called moderate conservatives is bullshit. Like, these people, I've done canvassing before and done poll work and shit. These people will tell you whatever it is that they think you want to hear, whatever sounds agreeable, and then go and vote on election day for this motherfucker. Because as grotesque as he is, the policies, all of that shit, those are Republican policies, dude. Right? Like, appealing to so-called mythical moderates, especially with the Supreme Court seat coming up, people think that, like, oh, that's going to affect their decision or whatever like that. It's like, or make them like not, or depress turnout, right? Like, if Trump puts like Amy Coney Barrett in there, they put Amy Coney Barrett in there. This is the presidency. It's completely different from the Supreme Court, from the judiciary, right? Of course they're going to vote for him still. So instead of appealing to young people and non-voters and working people, you're going to appeal to like the 5% who like will lie to you before like election day and then go in there with the privacy that they have and vote the way they want to do. This is insane, yo. It's completely insane. They are Republicans. Like, they literally are.
It's almost like they want to lose.
Oh, they do want to lose. They're controlled opposition. It's much easier for them to like lose and point to the Republicans.
Well, they don't want to lead. They like the whole point of these people is that they don't want this position to actually do any leading. Like, the power that comes from like raising your political profile like this is like much more like substantial than like having to actually do the job of leading a bunch of people who fucking hate you. Like, you know, so it's I think for a lot of these people, it is just about raising their public profile and going on to like privatized, you know, industries and stuff like that. I think for some people it is, what's that?
Becoming lobbyists and
becoming lobbyists and consultants and stuff like that. Like, I think that is more important to a majority of them than it is to actually like win and have to govern people. And I think the people that do want to govern people are like by and large like psychopaths anyway. Like, there's a very probably like small percentage of people that are like AOCs or Ilhan Omars that actually like give a shit.
Yeah. I mean, it's too much tension and contradiction, man. Like, you got this professional managerial class like of the Democratic Party, and then you have the working class, and their interests are diametrically opposed. And if the Democrats were actually to go through with these progressive policies, that would require them to organize people, like grassroots organizing. I used to work for the Democratic Party in Georgia as a fundraiser. And dude, like I was like, yo, where's this money going? Right? Like, what are you actually doing with this money? Right? You're not doing any political education. So it's like, yeah, they don't want to have to resolve that contradiction. And they would rather promise to, tax the rich and then take their money to run campaigns and then do their bidding, right? Like,
that was my point about when Biden was talking about all of these green new jobs that he's going to be bringing up. It's like, so how does anybody get to them? I mean, we always talk about all these jobs that each candidate is going to bring to the U.S. and where are they? I've yet to ever see them. I mean, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but I don't know anyone who's ever gotten any of the jobs that any politician's talking about ever.
Except for the people in their cabinet, right? Like from
Right.
fucking Goldman Sachs and fucking Google
No,
and
I'm
shit
talking
like that, and
about-
Twitter.
When he's talking about jobs for the people, in my whole life, I have never met one person who's gotten one of those program jobs. Never. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, and I'm not trying to be an ass when I say this, but a lot of times they're always talking about providing jobs for the underprivileged and jobs for for the
As
poor.
their servants, because that's all it is.
But they're
Is
never
creating
talking about
another.
middle class or upper middle class when they're talking about those jobs or when they're talking about those programs. And the middle class is shrinking, but the middle class that I grew up in, I'm thinking, what are you talking about? All of those programs that you claim that you're going to put out there, or all those jobs that you claim that are going to be so great, who the hell is going to get them?
Well, they don't want real jobs. They want more servants. Like that's all the underclass is to them.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's why I want to make that point. And this is why I get screamed at being, because I consider myself a leftist and I'm a Gen Xer, that I'm constantly asking these questions and I get screamed at that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I get no one can answer me that question. What have any of these politicians done directly for you? I know that I'm saying that with democratic socialism, I want our government to work for the majority of the people. But let's break it down to just you. Let's be selfish, because that's what we do in this country. So let's be selfish. What has any of these candidates done directly for you? And the answer is usually not a goddamn thing.
Exactly, Leslie.
Can I say something that Paris has done to me? So I don't know if you guys know this, and your audience won't, but I'm a sex worker, and I have been since I was 19 years old. And if you guys are familiar with FOSTA or SESTA, I would just like to point out that Kamala Harris co-sponsored FOSTA and SESTA.
Yep.
Do you guys know what that is? Does everyone
No,
know?
I don't. So can you please
Here,
explain that?
let me explain what FOSTA and SESTA is. FOSTA and SESTA are the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act and the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act. And what they did were they amended Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which what the Communications Decency Act does is it means that a website can't be sued into oblivion by the government or a third party for like civilly or criminally held liable for something that someone posts on their website. So if I go on Facebook and I'm like, I'm going to kill a bunch of people, the victim, people can't sue Facebook, right? So what FOSTA and SESTA did was they said that if prostitution, very loosely defined, occurs because of something someone posted on any social media or any website anywhere, that website can be held liable. So because these websites were like, there's no way that we can make a decision on a case-by-case basis what could result in prostitution or not, they created these algorithms on social media which swept through. And now it's to the point where if you talk about sex on Facebook, if you physically type out words that they don't like, you can have your account taken away. If you show too much cleavage, you can have your account taken away and deleted.
It's not just Facebook either. It's like
a lot of them. And Twitter is cracking down now too. And they went through and all these websites that indoor service, full service workers were using to be safe, they completely got rid of them. The FBI
like Backpage, right?
The FBI seized Backpage on April 6th, I believe. And then FOSTA SESTA was implemented implemented on April 11th of 2018. And after that happened, ever since then, we've seen suicides, we've seen ODs, we've seen murders, rapes, robberies of sex workers skyrocket. We've seen girls who were doing full service inside work on their own independently have to do street work and have to go to pimps. Kamala Harris has literally pushed women into the arms of sex traffickers under the guise of saving people from sex traffickers. They've also made it harder to find sex traffickers trafficking children because all of the evidence that was online has been swept under the rug and pushed to further deeper and darker and weirder places. And like now it's being done on track phones and now it's being done in person. So not only did they not curb trafficking, but they fucked over an entire community. So like I can tell you something that Kamala Harris has directly done to my life. She directly put her hands in my wallet and took money out of it.
Yeah, that's same here. I'm an in-person sex. I'm a stripper, but I also do online sex work. And this like Sesta Fosta passed around the same time, like I think a little bit before I started doing online work. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And sex workers are having trouble, like, you know, having any kind of visibility, like people, and it's not just like people that are quote unquote escorts or like full service workers. It is literally like all of it. If you have, OnlyFans girls, and people love being like, oh, OnlyFans girls, whatever. But it's like, no. This is a much deeper issue because sex workers have been saying it for years. We're the canary in the coal mine for policy that they want to pass that directly influences your First Amendment rights. It is a free speech issue. And nobody gave a shit because it was happening to sex workers and nobody gives a shit about us. So it's like, I talk about this actually on like my podcast within a podcast, 5 to 9 with my friend Simone, who is a full service worker in Seattle, quick plug. But yeah, it is a huge problem. And Kamala Harris has directly affected me and Merrick and pretty much every sex worker I know negatively. Like very negatively. So yeah, I'm not going to vote for somebody like that.
Yeah, and I'm expected to go cast a vote for that person.
Isn't this just liberalism 101 though? Right? Where they think that they're doing a good thing and they're moralizing a policy only to like hurt people even more.
The Department of Justice, NGOs, and sex worker organizations were like, please do not do this. Right, you know about this, right? They were like, please don't do this. This will not help. Trafficking organizations were like, please, God, do not go and make it so that there's less evidence of this online. So they knew. So like, I mean, you could say it's moral, maybe moral posturing, but I think it's a lot more than that. I think that we were collateral. Like there's no way that they didn't know that they just knew that they could pass feel good legislation that suburban housewives would go, oh, that sounds great. They're actually doing something.
It was also co-written by a sex worker who was trafficked through Backpage. Well, she was a sex traffic victim who was trafficked through Backpage. Yeah, she was one of the I forget what her name was, but she was basically like, she was part of writing the legislation, and it turned, and she went, like, when Backpage went down, she was like, good, I'm glad. And which is like, it's awful because it's like, that was the only way that she felt like she could get justice was collaborating on this bill that hurt a bunch of like, consensual sex workers.
Sort of industry.
But it was just like, nobody wants to be seen fighting the sex trafficking bill, like it was an optics war. And
it comes right back to them being able to control the framing. To control the framing.
Exactly.
And nobody ever wants to stand up for sex workers because nobody wants to be horny on Maine. Nobody wants to be horny on Maine, and nobody wants to be seen standing up for. We are like the untouchables.
We're untouchables.
Kind of. Yeah,
we're literally untouchables, and we still live in a society that is completely entrenched with misogyny and whorephobia. And it's funny, you guys, like earlier you were like, oh well, that's a problem on the left too, and I was like, I pretend I do not see it. I don't want to get into it, but it is a huge problem. Like I'm very new to left Twitter, and I thought that I was going to be welcomed. I thought that I was finally going to find people who had my same interests, and I was going to form relationships with people, and I have been overtly abused and harassed every single day. My experience online is absolutely miserable. The left is horrible to me. They treat me like dog shit every single day, to the point where like I've definitely considered like just dropping out of everything I'm doing and being like, I don't want to talk to any of these people anymore. So like we still live in this horrible misogynistic society that views sex workers as lesser, and a lot of people who will go online and call themselves Marxist-Leninists or call themselves anarchists. Well, it's rarely anarchists, it's usually MLs. But a lot of these people, I'm about to fight some communists online. A lot of these people will go on and be like, oh yeah, sex work is real work, but Merrick's a fucking psyop. Merrick's a dumb CIA agent. Like, it's,
yeah,
you know,
they say shit like that about me too. Like they'll be like, who is this like dumb bitch? Da da da. And it's like, I'm a communist, asshole. Like I'm doing actual community organizing. What the fuck are you doing? Like you're a keyboard warrior.
Have
like
you seen that sex workers are enemies of the working class? Have you seen that one yet? Or that we don't possess class consciousness?
Yeah. I've seen all of it. And it's funny because before we followed each other on Twitter, I was basically like a reply guy for you. And I was like, leave her alone, bitches. Like you can fucking fight me too. I'm an ML and I say sex work is fine. Like, so like it really puts you on the defensive all the time. Anyway, we kind of like strayed way off topic, but
yeah, no, like
sorry, I just want to talk about Kamala Harris. I'm sorry that
I had tweeted something like, you know, all leftists like, you know, should stand with sex workers, like, and people like were dead ass in my replies, like telling me that in a communist society, sex work wouldn't exist because it's inherently exploitation. And I was like, dude, what the fuck are you smoking, yo? I was like, what are you smoking, dude? Like, man, I'm so sorry y'all have to go through that, man.
Their idea of sex work automatically goes to like the most exploitative and the most traumatizing experiences because they're misogynists. Because that's all they can like understand in their heads is that like sex for money must be a traumatizing, horrible experience, and whoever wants to do it is doesn't understand like that they're being raped. So it's fucked.
So it's these like patriarchal swerve talking points that we're really, really inundated with, I think, in this country. Well, in a lot of countries. And there's, you know, I'll see conversations online where it's like, hey, you know, you were raised in a capitalist society or you were raised in a misogynistic society. So like, even if you're like, hey, I've discovered the left, I've discovered that there's other ways to be, there's always going to still kind of be remnants of like the social conditioning that you grow up with, right? But I have never, ever seen a conversation where it's like, hey, you grew up to hate, like, you know, we grew up in a society where women are not allowed to be sexual. We grew up in a society where even if they are, sex has to mean specific things, or you can't be slutty, or sex work is wrong, or sex work is for women who have crack addictions, who live on the street, who have 3 kids and they're in welfare, and this is what they have to do. Like, so I tweeted that sex work can actually buck patriarchy, and I got a massive amount of backlash for that. And that was one of the things that really people started getting angry with me about, is because in a lot of people's minds, all sex work is survival sex work. All sex work is a Vietnamese girl who's been sold into bondage by her parents, you know, and people were like, how dare you say that to women in the third world? And I was like, look, I'm allowed to talk about the experiences of women in the Western world who have a more privileged time with sex work. Like, as long as you're sitting there making the distinction, like, hey, there is trafficking, which is rape and slavery. There is survival sex work. There is also voluntary sex work. Like, as long as I think you're able to break those things down, it's okay to talk about sex work that isn't survival sex work. You know, it doesn't always be this like condescending thing.
But you know what? Even if there's, okay, so for people like me, who's just, you know, some suburban woman who doesn't know much about sex work, which, you know, I can't speak to it the way that you, Robert, or you, American, speak to it. But I can say this. I do know that, yeah, there's survival sex work. And if you two and people who thought like you got people to understand what needs to be done to make sex work safer, then my best friend from high school wouldn't have died a sex worker on the street.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You had to explain.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And it's like we don't want stuff like that to happen. Like that's another misconception too, is that sex workers want everyone to be everyone can be a sex worker. It's like, no, we want it to be like, we want to create a world where that's always a consensual choice, where you're not pressured into it or trafficked into it. It should always be a consensual choice. And yeah, there will be less sex workers, but it's like, it's really violent to say there will be no sex work under communism. It's like, that's not even true historically. So it's like, it's really a violent like statement to say to sex workers who that's how like are living, you know? And so like, and it really sucks because it buries the real issues, like making it safe, you know, like making it really safe for people to participate in.
Yeah, and the only reason, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, but I want to throw out there for people who don't know anything about me, my best friend wasn't black. My best friend was not a person of color. My best friend looked like Marilyn Monroe, literally. She was this gorgeous, golden blonde, blue-eyed, the American dream, and she destroyed herself. And I think partially because there were no safety nets for her.
So this is part of why we want to talk about it in a way that's, you know, positive. Is like people will get really mad at me and they're like, oh, you're glamorizing it. And I'm like, well, I'm not glamorizing it. I'm fighting for my right to be seen and treated like an equal human being. So if I can say, hey, it's okay that I'm doing this, that's not the same thing as, are you 17? You should sign up at a strip club. It's not the same thing. It's treat me with a modicum of respect and judge me based on how I treat other people and the manner in which I hold myself and how I attempt to contribute to my society, right? So it comes back to like any attempt of us to be like, hey, we're not wrong, we're not victims, is seen as you're trying to get young girls to think this is okay. And it's like,
yeah, like an endorsement of like pedophilia or something, like, which is just like, it's
but like glamorizing it, you know, because especially with OnlyFans, like people will be like, oh, you know, you're trying to normalize OnlyFans. And it's like, I don't want sex work to be normalized because I also don't want to compete with 6 million other girls. I don't want it to be normalized because my life was completely derailed and now I'm getting a divorce because I was a sex worker, right? Like in a really roundabout way, it really fucked up my life and it fucked up my husband's life. So I'm not trying to normalize it. I just want to not be treated like dirt every single day.
Yeah.
It's the same way that the pro-life people, that the way that they frame pro-choice people is that pro-choice, we're all running around like grabbing 16-year-olds and going, go get an abortion, go get an abortion. That's not what it's about. And that's exactly what keeps happening. It's the same with Black Lives Matter. It's like, we're not going around saying that we need to, you know, I'm not demonizing writers or looters, but we're not telling people to do that. That's not what they're telling people to do. This is about a specific thing and you're trying to change the narrative, and what you're trying to change it to is complete and utter bullshit.
I think it's a really bizarre and kind of twisted kind of mental gymnastics, honestly, for someone on the left to look at this and say, in this world full of this capitalist world, where like, how much work is survival work realistically? Like, you know, people make a big deal out of survival sex work, but it's like, is it?
I was a survival barista. No one was trying to save my ass.
Yeah,
like,
I've had friends who work a lot of very dangerous, like destructive jobs, like such as working sanitation for the city. That's one of the most dangerous jobs a person can work on this planet. You know, I've had friends who work jobs like that. I've had friends who worked in the forest industry, you know, where they watch, you know, their buddy just lose an arm one day, you know, shit like that. And yet somehow there's this fucking mental pretzel that these leftists on Twitter will tie themselves into, these fucking idiots. Obviously not all leftists, I'm one of them, but like the bad ones will tie themselves into this fucking mental pretzel to be like, oh, but this is more exploitative. This is worse than other things that are also clearly like, no, capitalism is bad. And most people are being exploited under capitalism, regardless of their fucking industry. And we should like protect everybody's fucking industries as a result, you idiots.
And that's why essential workers are making less than $15 an hour. That's the whole crux of everything. All work is survival work. We have to work to survive. So I don't know what the hell anybody's talking about.
Well, and you know what? I worked in the restaurant industry starting when I was 14. Like, I grew up kind of white trash. My parents were like, "You're going to work," and I was like, "I guess I'm going to work." You know, I was on my own at 18, and I cleaned. I had jobs where like I would work 2-3 jobs at one time in a city with no bus system. That's all hills with a bicycle to get around, working across town. Like, I did that while being sick. I've worked in a restaurant where I was the waitress, I was a hostess, I was a busser, and they paid me $50 to clean the entire building. Like, and then they paid me $8 an hour, and I got up at 6:30 in the morning, and I left at like 5. Like, I've been exploited. I was almost a manager of a corporate chain at 19. Like, I know what it's like to work real jobs. So I think when people try to tell me that I'm more exploited now that I do OnlyFans, I think it's one of the most privileged, bullshit, ignorant statements that anyone could ever make to my face, because I will never forget working in a restaurant and people snapping in my face and being like, "Come here," or like, "I need you," or like people being like, "Just seat me now." Like, being a hostess and someone being like, "I want a table now and you're gonna do it for me." Whereas now I log into my OnlyFans and someone is like, "Mistress, I love your beautiful feet. Here's $100 tip, you angel. Please get back to me whenever you feel like it." Like, I'm exploited now, especially with things like OnlyFans, where I also remember working at the strip club and someone slipping their hands inside of me and me going to the manager and being like, "This person just sexually assaulted me," and the manager being like, "Okay, I'll go talk to him, whatever," and then me seeing them 20 minutes later and me never getting paid for it, literally getting sexually assaulted, and the manager being like, "I don't know what to tell you, they spent us $700 at the bar." So like, to tell me that I'm exploited now, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely.
I was gonna say, like, sex work, consensual sex work for me means that I've been working in the restaurant industry on and off since I was like 16 too. So like, I totally feel you on that. And like, sex work for me was, when I go into the strip club and I work, like, if a customer is pissing me off and I don't like them or they're being creepy, I have the option of walking away. I don't get to do that as a server or a bartender or a receptionist, which is all things I have been. Like, I don't get that option. I am like a servant, like in the service industry. With sex work, like for me, like it means that I have the power to walk away from a situation that makes me uncomfortable. And like, I really wish people would like understand that about us, is like, some people choose this job because it gives you the freedom that you do not get in society, like as a regular, like as a non-sex worker.
Do you know where I had someone throw a shaker tin at my head?
Where's that?
When I was a bartender. You know where I've never had an underage girl pick up a shaker tin off the counter and throw it at my head? At the strip club.
At the strip club, yeah.
I've never had a customer at the strip club try to throw something at my fucking head. But when I was a bartender, people were so disrespectful. Like, you know, you'd make like 10 drinks and people would be like, "Here's your $0 tip."
Yeah.
Like, that never happened to me at the titty bar.
Well, I'm sure we could go on all day, but we've already run this stream over our normal allotted time because this was such a great conversation. Not that it's a problem. Nobody needs to feel bad. But this was such a great conversation that we just had to let it run a little long for the sake of just enjoying it and letting everybody out there enjoy it. Thank you so much, everybody for joining us today. Everybody out there in the audience, as well as our lovely panel. Rara, what do you got going on that you want to plug?
So in actually like 45 minutes, I will be on stream again, and I will be doing Hot Girl Agenda from 6 to 9. It is just like a 3-hour stream, and then we're going to have Brandon Buchanan on to talk about some Metro Atlanta DSA stuff for the past year. And then we're going to have Aaron, who's already here, talking about Louisville stuff. We're going to go in depth about the history of, like, a short history of Louisville and policing and Breonna Taylor and gentrification. So it's going to be a really good panel. Y'all should tune in.
Leslie, what do you got going on?
What I've got going in is Into the Abyss this week is actually going to be at 10:30 Eastern Time live, because we've got a guest from Vietnam. She's a comedian who's an expat. So that should be pretty cool. And then always, please pick up my book, Forgotten Tomorrows, Crazy Todays, available on Amazon.
Aaron. I know what you got going on, but let's remind everybody because it's very good.
Yeah. My new podcast, Time of Monsters, is going to be coming out in, I think, about 2 weeks. I'll drop the Patreon soon. You can go to Adam_pod on Twitter to find me. Just be chronicling our descent into barbarism and talking to a lot of smart and dope, influential people on the radical left, journalists, organizers, content creators. Got an interview with Glenn Greenwald, Brandon as well, Mariah Parker, Cushmom, Matt Chrisman as well, and another comrade from Twitter. So I'm really excited for that. So look out for that and follow me on Twitter for updates.
And Merrick DeVille, last but not least, thank you so much for joining us for the first time. I hope this is the first of many appearances that we get from you. What's going on with you? Plug everything that you have going on.
I'm just working on my YouTube channel right now. I'm relatively new to content creation, so that is Merrick for America on YouTube. And then if you want to see a lot of like ridiculous, sexy, horny posting and shit posting, you can follow me on my Twitter, which is just at Merrick DeVille.
It's a very good Twitter feed. Everyone should follow it.
Yeah.
And of course, if you appreciate our show, Not Safe for Wonks, you can follow us at NSF Wonks on Twitter. You can also go to patreon.com/notsafe because this is 100% independent media made possible by viewers like you. We're just a bunch of knucklehead anarchists with no dollars to our names except the dollars that you send us. So please, patreon.com/notsafe. And we will see you next time. And don't forget, stay tuned to this very channel for the Hot Girl Agenda in less than 45 minutes. Bye-bye.